Hi everyone, we're the Union and we have real talk about personal growth. And today we have two really, really good friends and great guests. We have Leni and Joey Dier, and we just love them to bits. And yeah, you missed a green room. It sucks for you. So Leni is a relationship and intimacy coach who is passionate about the truth. Her gentle attention penetrates the heart of the issues, and her fiery nature holds a torch for authentic communication, speaking vulnerably and revealing emotions. She guides people through the maze of relating, creating possibilities for sustainable relationships. Joey is a transformational coach who specializes in relationships. He helps transform difficult wounds and lifelong patterns through gentle touch and strong, clear sight. In his personal practice, he coaches men and women who are ready to change, lead workshops, writes, and create safe spaces for growth. Together with his wife, Leni, they coach couples bringing together their combined experiences alongside a grounded approach that values trust, honesty, and connection. Union show creator Keith Paolino is a master coach with over 4,000 hours of one-on-one coaching under his belt and has taught over 1,000 students on the subjects of sex, dating, relationships, and intimacy. His main purpose is to help emotionally adolescent adults grow into becoming fully expressed and integrated. My name is Riach, and I am based in Silicon Valley. I coach startup founders and entrepreneurs increase their relational intelligence so that their investment connections create the success they are looking for. I'm also a filmmaker, and I tell stories that connect us as human beings more deeply. So today, we are talking about false imprisonment, when your identity keeps you locked in. What does that mean, Keith?
I don't know. Let's see. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Union. We were all kind of just on the share for the topic thread. We were kind of talking about different ways that we are either challenging our identity, or kind of stuck in it in some way where it kind of keeps coming back around. And I think just the general overview on this is, you start on a path of some kind of personal growth, and you will see changes. And in our kind of inner adolescent loves celebrating that and like feeling like, all right, I changed and I'm done with that thing and I worked on that, so now it's over. But there's something about even that idea of like being done with identity change or personal growth that is a function of the identity program itself. Like, oh, I achieved this thing. And so kind of all the way around, it's that we end up in this very kind of small bubble of our own idea of who we are. And even when we think we've changed, we are generally operating from a whole like unconscious place. So this kind of idea of false imprisonment is like, it is our own identity structures, our own personality, our own family history that keeps us trapped in doing the same things over and over again, having the same relationships, having the same job experience, meeting the same guy, or kind of all those patterns. And then there's this kind of idea that there is a way to leave that and to shift from that, but it's very difficult because the whole thing is that we are attached to a particular construct of how the world is. So we're definitely more esoteric today than usual. Are you showing us someone? Is there a kitty?
No, I am claiming a better spot.
Oh, you like lit up. So as we usually do, we go around and talk about each person's idea of today's topic, what it means to you. We will start with Leni.
Ooh la la. Wow.
A minute or so on what you think.
It's wild. Like, I mean, I can come on here and pretend like I know. I really don't freaking know. As you can see, there's a new hairdo, and that woke me up on a way that I didn't even anticipate. I was so attached to looks and there's the meme of what like beautiful women look like, and long hair. And when that got cut off, wow, it just forced me to go in deeper and find what beauty is for me. And it's, I mean, I did this about a little over a month and a half ago, so it's still like this journey, and how I look at other women. So identity, it's like, oh my God, being in a space of like, I don't know what mine is, like what's mine and what I've adopted because I didn't know otherwise. And it's a gorgeous and difficult, painful thing to like look and ask, what is it for me? What keeps me trapped? What gives me, where do I put my own glass ceiling? In different expressions in different areas of my life. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Joey?
Hi, everyone. Identity, yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday, about how there's different like in some ways identity is a shape, and we are fluid beings that are changing all the time, and then there's these moments where we're a certain shape. And there's different levels of identity that go very deep. Some of those are very rooted shapes, like I'm a human for this many years. And then I will turn into the earth. And so there's different identities that have more lasting. I think when we're talking about false identity, we're talking about where I'm grasping onto an idea of myself that isn't actually true. And being able to look at that, where that comes from, our conditioning, families, environment, culture, or just an idea that is like, oh, I think this is the right way to be. And then if it's not true, it's going to crumble, and then we get to experience something new, real, and deeper expression of ourselves.
Thank you. Cindy, do you want to go next?
You go next.
Okay. So I just think about this in terms of like how I've learned to acknowledge and experience longer term growth, because I think the main thing that one of the main things that my mind gets trapped in is what I call circumstantial justification, which is like, I'm this way because of this set of circumstances, and therefore I don't have to look that deeply at how I am or what I'm doing or what the behavior is. And that is something that keeps me from looking at patterns, looking at deeper patterns. And so I've been trying to stay more focused on how is this year different from last year, and how is now different from 5 years ago. Because it's a hell of a lot easier, because I live inside of this thing that I'm trying to, I live inside of this body, I live inside of this daily life, and I'm trying to turn my audio down. And so then it just becomes more difficult on a day-to-day basis to see it, to see the changes, to see the sames, the changes and the sames, and through that like longer term view is what I'm looking at. But in terms of like feeling imprisoned, I hit up against like that moment when I see that I've done the same thing. And like the hardest thing in the world is not to shame myself for repeating something that I really like, that I feel strongly no longer serves me, that feels strongly no longer has the impact on me and the people around me that I want to be having. And like it is so hard not to just like, just flagellate, like just beat myself up for like, God damn it, again, I did this thing again. And so that to me is like what the false imprisonment is, because I don't have to. The flagellation is the experience of the identity program enforcing itself. because I like the shame. I like the the down of doing this pattern that I repeat because it's familiar. And so then the beating myself up is actually part of how the identity program keeps me doing that pattern, because I get my shame hit from the beating myself up. So it's a really intricate thing that we're talking about today, and hopefully we'll be able to simplify it a little bit in terms of like our personal stories and relating to it. So that's mine.
Mhm. The part I'm working with lately is I'm just working on really, really young parts. I'm doing a really intense NLP training, and a lot of the things we're touching on is, of course, my mother doesn't love me, and of course, she never wanted me. Like, I have all this evidence. And when I resource those really, really small parts when I was first conceived, or even before I was conceived, I realized that I was wanted. She was just very vastly under-resourced, and it expressed itself in a way that that wasn't great for a kid's upbringing. So for me to take that in and to it's strange, because like belief and identity is like kind of enmeshed. For me, it's sort of like, okay, like this is one thing, and how do I start with this belief that I am actually loved? How do I navigate my identity when I have been the bad child, or the bad person all of my life?
Mm. Thank you. So if you're just joining us, welcome to the Union. We're going to talk about personal growth. This week we've got the Diers, Leni and Joseph, and of course it is Cindy and I, par usual, talking about false imprisonment, something about identity. What is the? Hang on, you have it? When your identity keeps you locked in. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I'm a professional. Professional what is the question though? And yeah, we just I think it's a great topic, and we've got about 40 minutes of open discussion and an unexpected guest.
Cindy, I love that you said for you, like identity and belief is almost like the same, intertwined. Yeah, it had me think of this analogy that I heard once at a workshop, where we create our own cell and it's open, but what we end up doing is making the cell comfortable. Mm. But it's open, and I was like, wow, yeah, there's this way that being comfortable with the uncomfortable, I almost prefer that, because there's this false illusion of safety, like, oh, I know this is what's going to happen if I stay here, mm-hmm. and do what I do what I've always done. And it's scary to think like that door is open and I can step out and do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And what does that mean to my ecology and like all the other pieces of my identity that is dependent on this cell being in the cell? Like, mm-hmm. For me, like I think I lost what I said. I just lost what I had. It's like I have more sense of responsibility and power if I knew that I was a bad child. Then I could do something about it. If that's taken away, the world just seems so much scarier. Like I'm powerless, like I'm out of control. And so like that's how I've made myself very comfortable, was like, well, if I'm the wrong that's bad and wrong, then I have some sort of sense of control to make it better.
I totally can relate to that one. I've recently been really working with that, where there's this idea that the reason I wasn't getting a certain type of nourishment or connection, especially as a child, was that it was me, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't doing it right, that if I just blah, blah, blah. So playing out that pattern, it's like, I'm in control. It's still like somehow I don't have to face the reality that, and what I've come to of like, well, that probably wasn't available. Like that thing that I was after wasn't actually available, and that was painful for that little one in me. So to like maintain this idea of it's my fault, like just like you're saying, like keeps it in the realm of it's me, and then basically creating this whole identity around me being wrong, me being not enough, me being all of these things. And then to walk out of that cell, like you're talking about, Leni, and what's being talked about here, that is, the term breaking ranks keeps coming up for me over the last month or two. It's just such a good term. The visual of everyone being in the same line and then breaking that. And it can be, it can crumble things. It can be, you're just in the middle of the field on your own. You've broken.
Oh, you're so exposed.
Exactly. And that comes with this of like, why do we keep some of these identities for so long? I don't think it's always because perhaps we think it's a good idea, but it might, the change is intense. It can be intense. It can be challenging.
I mean, I want to be more emphatic because we're talking about survival mechanisms, and that there is this notion that if we undo this survival mechanism, I mean, we're going against the very fabric of ourselves that has kept us alive so far. And in its mind, like this kind of separate part of ourselves, if we're still breathing, it's done its job. And so there's no good reason for it to stop doing its job at any point, because if it does, you're going to die. And it's as simple as that. And so there's the psychic pain involved in deconstructing this thing that thinks it's keeping you alive.
Or a whole system alive.
Right.
I mean, the society thinks this is how you should be, and then you stop, then the whole society is, on some level, is going to be like, wait a second, is this okay? Like this.
Oh yeah, because we train everyone around us to help reinforce our identity programs.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, and then like talking about like men or women, like a man suddenly being more emotional or expressing himself in a way that doesn't fit the ranks, then it challenges all the other men to like who see that as a survival mechanism, right? And of course, challenging the self too. And there's something Gabor Mate talks about, where he's talking about authenticity and attachment. And he's saying when we're kids, we have these dual drives, and we have attachment because we need a connection. We're like human infants are the most vulnerable infants.
Right, we are dependent.
We need it. And then authenticity is like, if we're dropped in the middle of the woods, like to be able to feel and follow our instincts is absolutely essential for survival, to be able to sense danger, all of these things. So we need this too. But what happens is there's this moment where we're pissed or something happens and we're told that if we stay this way, we're not going to get love. And it kicks in attachment. And then this one gets weaker. And then we have a lot of this lopsided identity because we're so concerned about the attachment, when in reality, yeah.
So are you saying like what we're talking about in terms of like the false imprisonment, like this identity structure that we've created is like so that we could be connected and like accepted by others?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
That doesn't sound too bad. When you put it that way. Aren't we all like for Instagram fame? I'm totally joking.
I mean,
I know. So cracking me up.
Yeah, because I mean, this is a place where like this is the shit I love to talk about and like what I've learned over the years, and I also want to be mindful of, for myself and for the show and for the audience, of like, not going too far into the kind of academic headspace of what we're talking about, because I think there's a lot of framework that we can provide from our practice, in terms of like, what is this stuff and how does it impact us, and I'd love to keep it more in the realm of like, I just want to talk about like Erikson's stages of identity development. I'm like, that's not necessarily going to be in service to our audience and our what we're trying to deliver. So I'm just curious of like, starting with more personal experiences of what it feels like to be in the prison of your own mind.
Got it. I'll share. I've been taking S Factor classes, that's pole dancing classes. And at first I did it because I'm like, oh, wow, that would be sexy. And it's a great workout. And yes, I'm a yes. And as I started, they're really about embodiment, like just being in your body and moving the way your body wants to move. Well, I've completely disconnected from my body. I started realizing that my body moved in a very masculine way. It was very fast, 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 and very linear. And they asked us to slow down and move and accentuate our curves. And my body was just like, danger, danger, danger. If I do that, I am calling in danger. And it was such a mind fuck. And I just started crying because I was like, wow, I don't know what it's like to naturally feel my curves, feel safe, and move slow. I know how to move my body based on my mind. I do not know how to move my body based on its natural intelligence and how it wants to move. So that was just revelatory for me. I was just like, oh, how do I not know how to move? And it's been a painful awakening in my body and a glorious sensation when it finally feels safe enough to move. Yeah. So, and I catch myself going, oh, nope, I should move this way. This is sexy. And when I move based on what my mind thinks, it feels uncomfortable. And when somehow miraculously, where my mind just shuts off for a second and the body's intelligence takes over and moves, the women are like, oh my God, that was gorgeous. It doesn't compute. There's this uncrossing the wire and disconnecting, or not disconnecting, but reconnecting to my body.
I'm kind of projecting on your experience a little bit, Leni, but I was just like, yeah, it's like so not safe to be out in the world. And like when I walk down the street, like I minimize, like I'm just like, I'm not gonna bring unwanted attention and people hollering at me and telling me to smile. And like it's like the most dangerous thing, like for me, like to know that I'm in the world and like someone could attack me out of nowhere because I'm a woman, and it's scary. I'm projecting. But that's what came up when you were talking.
Well, what's interesting is that when I shaved my head, I didn't have that fear anymore, because it was like, oh wow, I don't look the typical feminine. So there was this like, oh, I can breathe. I wasn't worried about people looking at me. It was such a neat experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh. I want to learn how to pole dance. Thank you for sharing that, Leni. It's what I enjoy about you being on the show and just speaking to you in general is like I could relate to so much of your experiences in a way that I don't typically put in the words or like have my attention on. And like when you speak it, I'm just like, oh yeah, that exists for me. That's like really true for me.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just trying to notice, like, where is it in my life that's like still feeling stuck in an identity loop of some kind where I don't, like, I just can't, there's something I can't see to escape it. And I think the one that feels true still is that I feel disconnected from my own experience in a very fundamental way. And so I use my relationships and experience of the outside of the external world to try and create some connection to what's happening inside of me.
Mm.
So I use people to understand myself, and and if I'm not getting enough of that, I create I create conflict. I would say is probably the kind of most extreme version. Sometimes I'm like soft and I'll ask, or like sometimes it's like more of a range, but in the place where I feel anxious about not understanding, or like if there's this dissociation between what's happening inside and like my experience of it, I think it unconsciously causes stuff to happen out here as a reflection of what's happening in here, and I'm still not, I still don't feel clear on like how do I keep getting down into that place so that I can not have to cause external reference in order to understand. Like it's like my mind feels locked out of my emotional center a lot of the time still. And like how do I create a direct path? I've got this very kind of obtuse indirect path to understanding what's happening inside by this thing externalizes create stuff out here in front of me, and that my mind can understand that, and then this kind of whole um, thing happens, and I feel I still feel pretty stuck in terms of like I've I've there's more acceptance of that. Like, okay, so this is how it is right now, and if I want to do a better job of understanding myself, I have to do a better job of understanding my external experience as a byproduct of what's happening inside of me. But I still wonder if it's like, will it ultimately be possible for me to have a direct line to that internal experience, or am I just formed in such a way that I will always have to have the experience of the external representation of it?
Or is that part of the identity, like that structure, right?
Right. Right.
Mm.
Well, it's definitely part of, like, it is definitely the identity. Is it a workable program? Basically, is how I try to look at it. Like,
So, according to NLP, being internally versus externally referenced are like it's like an axis that you can work with, and you can gain some flexibility around it. But if you're just naturally externally referenced, like that's your go-to. So like you can work with it so that you have more ability to just be like, okay, these are the practices I need to get into so that I can be more internally referenced. But I don't know. I'm just speaking from like the framework I learned. It's just like if you're a naturally externally referenced person, that's just how
right.
you do it.
But then if I suppose that my externally referenced, you know, home base is a survival mechanism that formed an identity program, is it possible to step outside of that identity program to deconstruct that survival mechanism and to have a different experience of myself? Or is it kind of like what you're saying, which is like that one is like so ingrained into the fabric of who I am as a human that I can gain agency and fluidity, but not actually be able to deconstruct it.
You just gotta work with it.
Yeah, that was my sense too. Is it's part of you, so it's gonna have to come along somehow, and maybe it's not in the same exact form, but but it's this natural, beautiful expression of you that's looking out for you, and maybe it's coming out in a intense or gripping way or something. But in the end, it's a natural part of you that deserves love, just like the rest of you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe it could be like have a different job or a different angle on doing its thing, but it's really,
Mm-hmm.
I think this brings up an interesting part of like we're talking about false identities, but there's a reason they occur,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's something where it's coming from that is striving for love, or is an essence quality that thinks this is the best strategy to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think empathy comes from actually understanding like those different parts. So like if Keith imagines, like Keith, if you imagine something stressful happening, and you reach out to someone and they support you in feeling better, how does that feel as opposed to you locking yourself in the bathroom and like getting in the bathtub and breathing it through? Like those two parts are very, very different. And like the one that makes you go is like really just the one that like makes you like, that's like the natural part of you. Like that's like, and there's nothing wrong with being externally referenced except when it's in overdrive.
Well, so one of the ways that I think about identity is in terms of choice, right? So we like to think that we are kind of like choice-based beings, and the more I've come to understand survival mechanisms and conditional responses and identity and all of that stuff, the more it seems like we have very little choice. We have almost no choice in our lives, essentially. Like what we do on any given day is essentially foretold by our survival mechanisms and conditional responses and identity programs. So to me, I look at, how do I get more choice in terms of being able to feel more internally referenced as a means of gaining freedom there.
As you were saying that, I was imagining it's like it's a heavy wave, this conditioning we are up with.
Right.
It's like to be able to stay clear means to be conscious of all of that water coming in and how we relate to it and how it may influence. And I think it does take one thing I love about, I mean, there's many things I love about LGBTQ plus people, but one of the things I love is that every single person that falls under that category has had to take the time to listen to a deeper part of themselves rather than the conditioned idea of sex and relationship. There's a moment in there that is like, okay, the external world doesn't match. I have to go in deeper to see what is true for me. And then I'm going to identify with something that's truer and deeper in me. So there is this, it's a tremendous journey. And recently in my life, there was an experience last month. We went to a beautiful couples retreat. And there was this moment I was feeling really a lot of resistance to letting go and letting myself be open. I have an identity where on the outside, I can be in this particular identity, I'm very extroverted, I'm very, all these things, but there's a spot inside that just, I don't trust anyone. There's just shut down way deep in there. And I had this experience where I could feel all my resistance, but it wasn't like, I felt my body tensing, but I actually wanted to open. I felt safe. And so I tried a couple different methods and I landed in a place where I let go. I had some help, but this is the beauty of community. And on the other side of that, it just so happened, it was just a tight little group. And then a couple other people came in and it had me feel like, oh, I could let all of these people in. And something on that inner part opened. So I'm sharing this because in the weeks that followed, I started to realize how much I've had this shield over a part of me, and actually starting to touch into this one in there that I've known about, I've talked about. It's like, you know, it can be the little one, it can be this, it can be that, but feeling so fully how much love is in here, how much generosity is in here, that has been sort of under the, I just imagine like a shield covering it and being able to access down here. And so there's this juxtaposition of learning how to be with this one and hold it and back it, even though it feels so much. I mean, I've always been sensitive, but like as I touch this one more, my overwhelm goes up, my tension in my body goes up, my, you know, things affect me more. And so there's a responsibility with it. And I think that to cap what I'm saying here, I think there is a responsibility with when we touch into a deeper identity, how we hold it, how we show up with it, how we commit to it, to commit and actually hold it in place rather than.
Well, that shit is scary as fuck.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ecology stuff that I can hear. Like, oh, if you shift it this way, like what are you losing that you value?
And yeah, and I was just talking about this a couple months ago where I was in a situation where we were talking about solutions and, you know, moving forward, and there was like this
Step
sort of
into the future.
Yeah, like there's a lot of positivity, which is great and all, but I was like, solutions are kind of fucked up. Like it's over here. I'm deciding to feel something I haven't wanted to feel, I haven't wanted to experience, or I'm stepping in the unknown, I'm stepping in uncertainty. Like, it's fucked up. Now, it's better than over here where I was numb or not feeling or being a victim to the same patterns over and over. Like, yeah, that's worse, but I don't want to sugarcoat this thing over here at all. Like, it's real shit. Like it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. But there's a reason why you're looking at it, because like what would having it do for you? A lot of things.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes back, is like that, like when we were talking about the externally referencing, like these things are here for a reason. Our bodies are so smart. They're so smart. Thank God. I always say this with clients when they're talking about some, you know, thing that they do that they have disapproval. I'm like, well, thank freaking God that thing is there. Otherwise, that inner part of you that's sensitive would have been demolished by now. I am so grateful for this part of you. It's kept you safe. It's kept that one here.
Yeah.
Getting worked up over here.
It's tough. Like I'm just like how do we reconcile all these parts, and like how do we acknowledge where we want to go without betraying or hurting like parts of us that don't want to go there. Like it's really just like being sensitive to all our parts.
I love that, because a lot of times I'm like, let's jump off the cliff with this thing. All right, I see it, let's go. And I'm learning it, but pacing with my personal growth has always been such an important thing, because it's like, it's so easy to jump off the cliff. Like, oh, there's the thing. We were just talking about my Enia type, right? Like the counterphobic 6. Like, I'm like, let's go towards the thing and handle it and fight the dragon. But that isn't kind to all the parts, and it doesn't work.
No.
There's a secret. It doesn't work.
Especially since the drive is fear.
Yeah, totally. Right. It's exactly. It's just creating more of itself.
I'm afraid of this. Let's go. Interesting. So funny.
What's helped a little, and before I would be like a closet case, like thinking I'm the only one that has these demons or these hurts or what have you. And it's like having these conversations with people, and then you get reflected back like, oh my God, me too. And having either, conversations with other people or myself, it's getting familiar with that. That's like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right, I need to check in with myself, which before was like my autopilot was skip over that part of myself, which causes so much damage. And even though I know that, the automatic response, the reactionary response is so quick. But now that I can admit it, I can have conversations with Joseph or friends or journal. Oh my God, journaling has been I hated journaling before with a passion. And when I started the artist way, wow, I started having conversations with those parts and admitting like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm fucking scared as shit. And somehow that's therapeutic. It's to admit it to myself, which I never wanted to before, because I thought, oh no, I gotta have my shit together and just go out into the world and not let anybody see. And as I've been journaling or sharing with people, there's like less pressure. There's still shame, but man, there's something magical.
Yeah, it's so impactful when you're like, was it just yesterday? It was yesterday. I think the first thing I wrote in my morning pages was like, I really fucked up. Yeah. And it was just like, oh yeah, like if I didn't actually take the space to admit this to myself, I would go out in the world and just like have an ego around it and like pretend like nothing's wrong and that I'm in the right. And like it really just takes the time. Like I love that you're bringing up morning pages because it's really helped me.
Yeah.
Morning pages are amazing. There's a study around what you're talking about here, where they took people who do yoga and meditation and compared it with those who didn't. And in the study, it was showing that the people that did yoga and meditation were calmer. They were calmer, but they were actually more aware of their problems or issues. So it wasn't like they meditated and the issues went away. It was through naming it and being with it that actually had them feel calmer. Mm-hmm. And there's also another study that showed how when someone was angry or afraid, when they said it out loud, that region of the brain got smaller. So instead of, when you name it, it gets smaller. It's not as much.
Oh, cool. I'm still learning how to say I feel angry. Like that's really hard for me. I'll act it out for like an hour before I say it. And it's like, I'm trying to reduce that time.
Oh my God. Talking about identity. This is great what we're talking about here, because for a lot of my identities, anger is not part of it. It comes out in some other weird way. It's anger energy, but it's not expressed as anger because it would dissolve the identity.
Joey, are you an angry person?
Fuck yeah. There's this amazing teacher, Stephen Jenkinson. He's amazing. But one of the things he talks about is like being brokenhearted is accurate for how the world is. Like to feel and be with the world really, that brokenhearted makes sense. It's not a bad thing. It's being broken open instead of pretending, that we're not blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I'm angry. This is because there's a lot of violation of boundaries all over the place happening. It's accurate to be angry, and it's healthy. And it also is part of, it's inspiring in a healthy way. Of course, anger, like any emotion, can go to negative places, but it isn't inherently bad.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what Leni said earlier about just like admission being healing. And to me, that's the thing I hear in that is surrender. And like, how do I get better? It's so funny, but it's like, how do I get better at surrender? Like, how do I get which, in nature, there's like, surrender is volitional. Like there's a choice. You step over the cliff not knowing where the landing is, right? That's the idea of like surrender versus like somebody pushing you off the cliff and you're mad about it, and that's acquiescence.
I'm pretty sure I accidentally get there sometimes.
What's that?
I'm pretty sure I accidentally get there sometimes. Like, oops, like I just surrendered. I'm pretty sure.
Like you're running and then suddenly the cliff is there and you don't have a choice but to jump off.
Okay, fine. It's there. And here we go.
Somehow all surrender for me is represented by a cliff and whether or not I jump.
It does have a falling sensation. It definitely, falling sensation.
Yeah, it also feels, you know why I think, when I think about it, it feels like that, like, the position of being both like dead and not dead. is what it feels like. Like you're leaping, and I don't know, like, is there a landing? Am I gonna die? What's on the other side? Like, it's like, it's not definite that it's gonna be bad, but it's not definite it's gonna be good. And in that, like, stasis space, it ends up feeling like what you were saying, like falling. But yeah, I think it's like how do I get, like, when it's one thing where I'm like running and I'm like, oh, the cliff's there, and I just gotta, like, I don't have a choice. I'm going over, so just fucking see what I can do. But when it's more like I'm aware in my life and I'm moving forward and I'm on this whatever zigzag path to get to my desire, and I can see that there's a cliff in the distance, and I know I'm gonna have to jump off, and and there's something behind me that is not working for me that kind of keeps moving me in the direction of my desire. I still have this is one of my identities of, like, I will have, like, both heels back off the cliff, facing whatever is, like, not serving me anymore, and still, like, only jumping at the very last moment before I'm going to get pushed off. Almost like my choice is defiance, not actual volition. Right? like, you don't think I can jump? I can jump. And so there's some identity in, like, my stubbornness, and how does that keep me, like, there's a way that it feels like I keep brakes on in certain aspects of my life, and that idea of how that, to me, like, when I do that, or when I can catch myself, like, keeping the brakes on is one of the false imprisonment concepts for me. Like, oh, I've got, like, this supercharged V8 in my car, and then I'm, like, pretending that I don't also have, like, a 70-pound anchor dragging out the back.
Great visual.
That's a fun analogy.
That's how I feel trapped by my identity.
Brings up for me this thing I've been working with around my creativity, where there are places where I have the anchor, the brakes on, but what I notice is when I have shame around the brakes, then they stay on, because I'm not actually listening to whatever they're trying to express. But if I give approval to that process, that part of my creative process that has me slow down, that has me take more time, that has me do whatever that thing needs, then space occurs. I'm not saying this is for you. This is just that analogy reminded me of that for me, because as long as I'm trying to jump off the cliff and making the part of me that's holding back wrong, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this identity that's like, I want to be in the one that's jumping off the cliff and not the one that's holding back. And when I embrace the one that also the identity that's holding back, and I figure out what the hell is what it needs, it's a voice in there, then something else can occur. And as you can imagine, with my tendency to just run and jump, I have equal amount of anchor, just like your analogy. I'm like tied to a building back there.
One eye popping out with the effort.
Right. I'm like, but just a little more.
That's hilarious.
It has me think of when something comes up for me in relation to Joseph, and I'm trying to look like I have my shit together. And so what came up recently really was this idea around pleasure. And I don't know what pleasure is for me. I know what society tells me pleasure should look like and be like and feel like. And like I'm gripping onto this so I can have this identity of like, oh, I have my shit together and I know what pleasure is. And then to admit that to him I was like, there's a part of me is like, no fucking way. Because then now it's like caretaking, like now I don't want him to think that he doesn't know how to pleasure me. And then there was like just the chaos that was going on, me trying to have my shit together, trying to protect his feelings, like all this attention out to protect what was in.
Right.
And then finally just saying, I don't know. I don't know what pleasure is for me. I know what it should look like, but.
Yeah, this is such a great facet of this topic, because so on one hand we're talking about like surrender and like admitting that we don't know, but on the other hand there's this like the false use of the word gaslighting, or like this idea that like we're the ones who know our experience the best, when clearly our identity programs are lying to us on a regular basis in order to keep us doing the same thing over and over again. And so there's something in there around like false imprisonment of like not wanting to admit that someone else or something else might know better for us than we can know for ourselves, and how to find that, or how to align with that.
Mm-hmm.
Something in there, right? Like there's something inside of that that's like so hard for us to stay with, like, because like, so I talk about this thing of like not knowing I felt like I don't know myself, I don't know my inner, and I do more and more every day. Like this is the whole 10-year long practice. Like I got some familiarity with this at this point, right? But that's what the like root in my personal growth journey has been, is like getting to know this thing. And so then as that's happened, more and more in any given situation, I have a sense of who I am, and then an easier sense of like I don't know, because I don't feel like totally knocked over by not knowing, or knocked over by the possibility that I've got to navigate something that's foreign. The sensation of it isn't so much, right? But yeah, like that thing of like being on your journey, the beginning of your journey, and having to admit that there's stuff that you don't understand about yourself, if there's something that you want, you don't know how to get there, but then the extreme vulnerability of allowing someone else in that space, and how to do that, and just know, like, there's some level of like, I wish people would know that like you're gonna get fucked up by personal growth. Like it's just gonna be part of the process, and so then
It's
allowing
like the
your
real
kind of
scariest
embarrassed
thing you could ever
teenager to
do.
try and shame your teacher for fucking you up is like you're trying to like shovel dirt onto, you know what I mean? Like it's just a weird, and it seems to be the kind of norm in terms of like, oh, this hurt, and so however I got here into the hurt is bad. And I'm wondering, like, how do we, there's a lot of practitioner experience in this show right now. Like, how do we help people to know that, like, that's actually just part of the experience, and like making it through that, and and feeling it is how you get to know yourself.
Because on the other side is more freedom. Because on the
Right.
other side is more freedom.
Yeah.
Because on the other side is more freedom. If you're just connected to what it is that you want, you're going to walk through the fire and you'll be okay. That's
Support
all.
too is great. Like trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
You can.
You could try. It doesn't.
You can try, but support, or somebody walking along with you, or someone you can.
Well, it's because the identity programs will lie to you, so of course you can't do it alone.
But also,
Only exist
most of
inside
our
this.
identity structures are in relationship.
Right.
We were not born in a lab where we were not touched or held or connected to or fucked up by other people. Like we were. Our identities are created by other people.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what's funny is that when I hit hard spots that I couldn't do by myself, Joseph would be like, reach out for support. I was just like, fuck no, you know what? I am done waking up. Fucking waking up sucks. And my old way, numbing, I'm fine. I'm not going to do it. But then there was a part of me that was like, no, we started on this journey of wake up, babe, we're going. But it's hard to ask for support. For me, it was terrifying. Yeah. And then once I did, I was like, oh God, why didn't I do this sooner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think another piece in here is acknowledging along the way. To me, in my experience, that's so important is when you're going through the fire, I mean, to keep moving, but to acknowledge what you have gained and what is changing, because when you're in it, when you hit those spots that really are tough, it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see why or what's the point of feeling all this stuff. But again, like seeing what the alternative was and what is incrementally happening can really ease things. There's another piece in what you were saying, Keith. Something came to me the other day where if I'm confused, if I'm in that state of confusion, I bring presence. Presence doesn't have any agenda. Presence is just there, it's watching, and confusion needs to know. So if I could be present with what's happening, I can drop below the confusion and be with just what I know. And maybe what I know is I don't know pleasure, or I don't know something.
But how do I get present?
How do you get present?
How do you get present?
When am I not myself?
And how do you get present?
How do you get present?
What is that shit? I don't understand.
Oh man.
I mean, yeah.
That's great. That's a fucking great question. They throw it out there so much. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what the? I am present.
How could I be anything but present?
Right.
That sounds like someone I know who goes on his Facebook and he's like, I'm present to my social media. And I'm like,
I noticed when I was feeling really confused about something, I felt a lot of pressure. And this was in a meditation that I did, so that was something that helped my presence. And what presence looked like was instead of engaging with all the thoughts, so there I had a lot of thinking, I instead was watching. And when I was watching, then I could see the thinking, and then I could also see how it was really, there was something underneath it. So how do you get present? I think there's a billion infinite answers to that, but that is what happened for me in that moment.
So I would love to do we're at the top of the hour. I can't believe it's passed so fast again. And I'd love for us to do a quick round of one thing or one way that you remember that you how you learned presence.
wait, first off, I just want to say that whenever we get on the show with the Diers, I think we should do 2 hours. So just could go on forever. It's so good. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go.
So is that cool with everybody if we just did a quick lightning round of what was the main thing you remember learning to get present? What did you use? Was it a tool or was it a lesson or something? Go.
Okay, yes. For me, I tend to shoot out of my body and it feels overwhelming. So when I focus on my breath and really just a slow breath, not a fast breath, it helps me come back into my body. And then I envision connecting to the earth and feeling sensations throughout feeling my fingertips and feeling my legs, and then transferring that attention on myself to a person in front of me. If that's what, if there's a dialogue going on.
Right. Okay. So what I heard you say was essentially a sensation meditation, meditating on the senses, the sensation in your body, and learning to be with that and the sensation of your breath in and out. Is that,
Mhm.
would you,
Yes,
is that accurate?
accurate.
For me, the most impactful thing to my presence has been the willingness and ability and expression of my feelings. When I am not willing to feel or see what I'm feeling, my presence is terrible. You can ask my wife. But when with the expression and intimacy of knowing and being in relationship to my feelings, then I'm able to be here, and I'm able to be with.
Nice. Thank you.
Vipassana has been a part of my life for a long time. It saved me from basically dying. So even if I'm just walking day to day and I've noticed tension in my body, I just go to Anapana, which is like just really just like feeling the sensation of my breath touching this part of my body. And if I have a little bit more space and groundedness, I can actually go into full body scanning, and I will drop a link because it's free and it's everywhere near you.
Nice. I would say the single biggest tool for me learning to be more present with myself and others is the practice of orgasmic meditation. The meditative aspect while being in physical contact with another person while getting a sensation feedback loop, all at the same time helped me stay with what was happening for real, and also helped me distinguish between myself and other, which is something that I had a lot of difficulty with in terms of boundary and expression. And so being able to be in my body, in myself, and in the awareness of my touch of another human really had me able to stay in this thing right here and now. So that is mine for presence. So with that, I think we'll do the wrap up. And I wonder, should we just count that as the final thought go around?
It doesn't relate to our topic as much as I would like it to, so I think we should do another round.
Okay. And this is why I ask.
Okay. Thanks for asking.
And so we do our normal popcorn, final thought, takeaway. What do you want to leave the peoples with?
I think for me, something that came up and became clear is that how much every bit of false identity has value somewhere, and there's a reason for it, and it's not something to cut out, but rather to understand and integrate, and it's part of us.
Ditto on what you just said, Joey, because what I'm learning in terms of getting to the different layers of identity and beliefs that are in my system is just like parts of me that need to be resourced and understood and held. And only through that can I get more freedom. And I will drop in more resources in links below.
It has me think of that story of the Japanese soldier who thought the World War, I think, II was going on forever and it had already ended. And then to bring him out, they did a tea ceremony. So it just reminds me of those false identity parts that work diligently to keep you safe. And even though that may no longer serve you, it's still doing its job. And to like, it's a practice for me to bow down to those parts and thank it, because it did me a service to the best of its ability of what it knew. And yeah, to learn to a practice, it's not easy. It totally contradicts what we're taught to. Oh, the bad is bad and the light is wonderful and beautiful, but the bad is gorgeous as well.
Yeah, I think for me it is about coming back to acceptance and this idea of anything that isn't serving you is also in some form being rejected by you, and the integration of that thing will have it shift in a way that will serve you. So this false imprisonment is also the way that we kind of reject ourselves when we put ourselves in a kind of prison, and that acceptance will free us. Self-acceptance equals freedom. Hashtag the end.
Felt like you're on a ride right there.
You made it sound like you could unhitch like that 10 off the back of your car and just let it drop off.
All right, well, with that, we come to an end of another show. Thank you so much to the Diers for being awesome guests once again. And we will be back next week with an oldie but a goodie. We have a kind of surprise guest that you guys know, Billy Stubblebean.
Oh, nice.
Coming on next week. Right? Do I have it right? God, she gives me that look, and then I think I fucked it all up.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know she confirmed.
That's awesome. She's great.
And who else? I forgot who the other person is.
Dan Sealing.
Yeah, Dan, our good buddy Dan. I'm just very excited about Billy.
Billy's great.
So far away. All right, well, we're way over time, so thank you guys so much. This is the part where we say goodbye. Goodbye to everyone out there. Thank you very much. Goodbye and goodbye.